Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Broman Clash, and this morning, yes, I'm doing another video in the morning again. But I want to talk about something that I've been seeing, quite a bit of, and that's the recent burning of churches, actually. And when I look at that, I'm just like, man, after we had, Dylan Storm Roof, and I gave my take on this situation, and it still harkens back to what happened. I mentioned before about the Birmingham, Alabama church bombing. There were church bombings, there were church burnings that were going on long before this was even happening. And I'm not trying to say that we should just get over it or we should turn the other cheek. No, because honestly, lives could have been lost in that time, and lives could be lost during this time as well. And the significance of the church is very important because the church holds, not only rebellious reasons, like it was a home for, slaves to actually learn, to teach, and, to be taught how to way to do things. But also, it's very sad because as much as I'm not very much a practitioner of religion, nor I really go to church, but I can understand the historical significance. But the fact that, churches are being, black churches are being burned down south, after this whole after what happened with Dylan Storm Roof. And you want to know what the real funny part is? And if it turns out that this is like, connected to race or something like that, it shows that, nothing really has changed in America. You know, Racism has definitely not changed. Racism didn't go away. It just merely just got converted. It just got converted, and that's just it. It's merely adapting with the times. They're not going to talk about race. They're not going to call you a nigger or negro right to your face. They're just going to look at you and just say, yes, racism doesn't exist, but yet their actions will prove otherwise. But yet, when I look at this, when I heard about, now it's 7 churches that are being burned. Before it was 6, now it's 7, and the AME, the Mother Emanuel Church, where Dylan Storm Roof shot those people, and then looking at that, it's just like, wow, man. So racism, white supremacy never even went away. It was still there. It's just that it adapted with the times. And denial of racism and facing it head on are 2 entirely different things. People actually think that by not talking about racism, by not acknowledging it, by not even talking about it, by not even sitting down and actually having a serious conversation with it, it's not it's just going to disappear. No, it's not. And the real sad part is the fact that these church burnings, that's what's really really bugging me. And when I look at what happened with the pastor Clementa Pinckney and what happened to him, and Barack Obama, I understand that he was paying his respects, but by singing Amazing Grace, especially when it has his has slave pro-slavery ties with it, and it deals with slavery to a bigger context than it really does. And the irony of him singing that, and Pastor Clementa Pinckney, over at the Mother Emanuel AME Church, is it's not only disrespectful, but it's ironic. But he sung it just out of respect, and I can understand. Maybe he didn't realize the context of it. Maybe he did, but who knows? But truth be told, he did pay his respects to the people, but at the same time, by singing, by turning the other cheek, by doing all of that, just because you have a black face in a high place coming to your town trying to pay your respects, that doesn't necessarily mean that times have changed. See, because when I look at my own people, man, I gave my take on my own people, and there's another flaw about my people that I really need to talk about, and that's the fact that after like the 60s, after the 70s, we started to shuck and jive too much. Crack epidemic, as our leaders were slain, as, people who started to stand up for us, started to get gunned down, we started becoming very afraid. We stopped standing up. We started to just, be docile. We just did this. Yes, master. I'm willing to get taught. Like, come on, man. And yeah, you want to talk about you're a free black person, you're a free black person here in America. Man, what about you is free? They're burning down your churches, yet nobody's really going to talk about it unless somebody actually speaks up about it. You're waiting for Dr. King, you're waiting for Malcolm X, you're waiting for all these brilliant leaders that lost their lives in the struggle because they knew the price. They knew the price that death was going to be the only way. Yet they still accepted. They still accepted the price because you want to know why? Because they loved their people so damn much that they were willing to do it. Yet, the fact that we want to recite quotes from Malcolm X, Dr. King, we want to recite quotes from Marcus Garvey, we want to recite quotes from all these other leaders, but yet we're not doing anything about it. And, you know, these 7 church burnings, you know, to keep it real with you, you know, the church burnings, it's really messed up because it shows that not a damn thing changed in America. And yeah, you want to talk about, oh yes, America's gotten better, you know, the race issue has gotten a bit better, the race issue, you know, things are getting a little bit, you know, not out of hand, we were definitely progressing. No, just because you hid the race issue doesn't necessarily mean that it's getting any better. You're just hiding it. Remember that South Park episode where they dealt with the homeless? It's the same concept. Basically, you didn't solve the problem, you just moved it. How do you solve a problem and move it? Matter of fact, why the hell are we asking the very same people who don't want us to have justice? We should stand up for ourselves. Just like the Black Panther Party, just like Malcolm X, we should start practicing self-defense. Like, honestly, I'm just going to say it. Fuck forgiveness. Fuck asking for forgiveness. Fuck forgiveness. Fuck, you know, just people forgiving other people. Because, honestly, we forgive people too much to the point that they think it's a habit. And these church burnings, which people could have been potentially in there, and they could have lost their lives. And yet nobody is willing to talk about that. And yet they think, oh, we should just turn the other cheek. We should just be forgiving. We should not, you know, even dare try to stand up. Because, you know, they love us. But let me put it like this. They love it when we are in chains. They love it when we are doing stuff for them. But they don't love it when we start doing stuff for ourselves. Let me put this into perspective. If they care so much about damn near property, how come, you know, CNN and NBC and them, they didn't talk about the church burnings? But yet they talked about a CVS being burned down. Man, fuck a CVS. Yet they want to talk about, oh, church burning, you know, these recent church burnings have been going on. Is it race related? And then they'll just probably put in like a little quip or something like that. But it's real sad and it gets real irritating to the point that, you know, me sitting behind the camera and just talking about this, what is it really going to do? Is it really going to rile up the spirits of the people or something? Or I'm just going to keep on rambling my head off? Because honestly, I'm just a 20-year-old young man. That's the only thing. And, you know, I'm just going to talk about these kind of situations because not only I'm interested in them, but it's also a topic that really harkens back to the civil rights era, where there were church burnings, where there were church bombings, where there were church shootings, where, you know, where it was in a predominantly black neighborhoods, and no, not predominantly black, but in historical black churches, where, you know, rebellion happened, where they were planning. And yet it's funny because if they were to do that kind of shit, you know, in my neighborhood, guess what's gonna happen? People are gonna be waiting for them like, come over here. Yeah, you gonna try to burn down our church now? That's not gonna happen. And it's funny because everybody wants to talk about, oh, racism disappeared. Racism is not there anymore. But yet people are gonna look at it and just be like, wait a minute. This reminds us of the 1960s and 1950s, 1940s, where, you know, the civil rights era was happening. But the height of it was in, you know, the late 50s and early 60s. But yet, at the same time, it boggles my mind because everybody's talking about, let's just ignore it. Let's not talk about it. Let's not spread any news about it. But if you don't spread any news about it, if you don't talk about it, if you constantly forgive your enemy, especially when they've done more than enough, especially America, where it had like 400 plus years of oppression and slavery. And yet it's talking about, oh, we should forgive. You know what, man? America doesn't even deserve any forgiveness, man. And I remember I read something about, you know, somebody who was wrongly imprisoned for 30 years. Prosecutor said, I'm sorry, and he said, I don't forgive you. That took true courage to say that I don't forgive you after he's been wrongly convicted of a crime. I know that's it ties in because that's also dealing with structural racism as well. Because he was wrongly convicted of a crime because he looked like a certain subject, and that goes on to Mr. Boulder, and how the way he was convicted of a crime that he didn't even commit, and he was 16 years old. And you want to know what the real sad part is the fact that they said, "Oh yeah, you can go, no apology, no nothing." Caused him, yeah, he had mental issues because of he was supposedly a suspect in stealing a backpack. Man, they only did it because they just wanted a quota. They wanted to just, this happened to a young man his last name was Boulder, and yeah, he talked to, yeah, they did it because they needed a quota. And if you watch my take on cops, and I talked about, an arrest quota and how the way they have to have like a certain quota in order to either be promoted or to have some sort of cash in their hands. Basically it was like that. They just needed to fill up a jail cell. They took an innocent young man and put him in a jail cell. And some of you may say, how does this tie in with the church burnings? Easy, because it ties in with white supremacy, and people don't want to talk about, white supremacy. They don't want to talk about racism. Y'all care more about a damn CVS than they do care about, damn the churches. And what? There were 7 churches that were burned. Matter of fact, 9 churches that were actually, no, matter of fact, 8 churches that were actually damaged. Not only physically, but psychologically as well. So now, if you put it into that context, now when I say church, sometimes I mean the building, but other contexts I mean like the clergy, such as the people, the pastor, people who basically go there. Hey, look, me myself, as much as I don't really go to church, I don't really care for religion that much, but I'm gonna give you my perspective on this because it's been historically known. It's been historically shown that this has been going on for years. And I mentioned about, structural racism and, just overall what happened to, the elderly man who passed away. Yeah, he passed away after he told the persecutor, he said, I don't forgive you, and he was wrongly convicted. And another thing that shows a bit of a sad side of structural racism was what happened with Mr. Boulder, and how the way he was wrongly convicted of a crime at the age of 16, just so he was sent up to Rikers Island, and yet they just only did it just so they could have an arrest. Yeah, after 3 years, but they try to say, oh, if you plead guilty though, you can get out much sooner. Man, we're not George Staney. We're not that 14-year-old that was the first ever minor to actually be put on death row at age 14. Yes, after some white cops try to tell him, hey, if you just admit to a crime, we'll let you go. And yeah, he said, okay, and he admitted to it. And this was in the South. George Staney Jr., I think. George Staney Jr., he was 14 years old, and then they said, yeah, that little nigger boy just admitted that he killed somebody. So they put him on death row. And after they told him that, oh yes, we will let you go if you do something like, if you just admitted to a crime. Now, some of you may say, how does this tie in, with the church, with the church burnings and, with the church shooting? How does this tie in, with all of this? Now, I'm going to give you a real reason why this all ties in, because I mentioned it before, structural racism and, white supremacy. Nobody wants to talk about white supremacy. Nobody wants to talk about ethnocentrism. But I'm willing to put it into a deeper context because I already did 2 videos on those subjects already. But the reason why this is very significant, especially with the church burnings, because it shows a lack of regard, for black life. And it shows that, the media is not going to talk about it, so might as well spread the news myself. And the fact that, it's arson and it was intentionally set on fire, from what investigators are saying, it shows that, like America's skeletons are finally coming out from the grave. And the fact that, you know, CNN, NBC, ABC, they're not willing to talk about it, but yet people are going to talk about it regardless. And just because you have Uncle Toms that are going to say, oh, yes, racism is in the past, we shouldn't talk about it. Yet you got, like, some, pretty cool white people, and few that are willing to talk about this in greater detail and just say, you know what, man, I'm just going to give it to you straight. This is what's been going on for a long time, like Jon Stewart. I understand, Jon Stewart, it felt like, man, that's kind of rare. Yet, people don't want to talk about these kind of things because they feel as if, like, white people feel as if they talk about race, if people talk about racism, they feel as if they're going to get attacked. But here's the thing, by you not talking about it, by you actually defending the racist, guess what? You're going to be attacked whichever way you look at it. Because you're trying to defend the very same system that your ancestors benefited from. And yet, you want to know what the real sad part is? You want to know what the real sad part is? It's the fact that there will be some people that will try to defend this type of thing. Yet, it's sad because it also shows that, even when people fly the American flag or fly the Confederate flag, here's the thing. The Confederate flag is funny because it's honest. It's like right in your face. It's just like, yeah, we represent this. The American flag is a bit more, hidden. And yet we still call hell on both sides. Yet some of you are gonna still ask, how does this tie in with the church, the church burning and the church shootings? And like I mentioned before, it shows a disregard for black life. And I know some of you may say that, oh, but the flag represents patriotism, it represents, history, it represents heritage. But yet to every side, there's also like a light and a dark side. Just like my hand. See, on the light side, it does represent unity, patriotism, and, and overall, a nationalism. But on the other side, it represents ethnocentrism, which is basically, a belief that one's own culture or race is superior. Oh no, that's racism. That believes that, one's own race is superior. But, ethnocentrism believes that it's one's own culture is superior than the other one. Genocide, murder, imperialism. There's a lot more negatives on the other side than there are positives. And this is just showing off, America's ugly side. Now, if people all over the world notice this, they're just going to be like, wait a minute, you're going to try to tell us about how to be humanitarian? Look at how the way you're treating your own people. And yet you want to talk about us. Look at yourself. But yet me telling, some Americans on like, oh yeah, look at yourself, look at your own history, that's just either going to embarrass them even more, or they're just going to be angry and try to hide the fact that, oh man, racism never happened. Racism is nothing new. Racism, people should just get over it. Now, I'm going to sound real insensitive, but I'm just going to put it into a proper context. Because some people will say, get over slavery, get over racism, get over that. But let me tell you something, get over Pearl Harbor, get over 9/11, get over that. Now, if somebody were to say that in response to saying, like, get over slavery, get over the civil rights movement, get over that, especially when that predated, those two major events that I mentioned, Pearl Harbor and, 9/11. Sure, I may say, sure, that sounds insensitive, but I'm just putting it into a proper context. If somebody were to say that, guess how many Americans would be offended? White Americans would be offended. Now, they will be offended. They will blast your ass on news talking about, this is what you said right here. And I'm just like, yeah. But then they tell me that I should get over slavery. I should get over Reconstruction. I should get over, what the hell was going on. But yeah, you want to tell me that I should get over those events. But yeah, I can't tell you should get over an event that happened like what? A certain amount of years ago. But yeah, mine happened like how many centuries ago? And it's still persistent to this very day. And yet, the mentality is still there. Sure, the physical essence is kept on like a low scale, like it's not being talked about. But the mentality is still there. By you not talking about racism, or by, allowing certain judges to judge, crimes, and, letting, police officers doing what the hell they want. You're letting basically an animal out. And some of those animals look like you or me. Maybe they might be a bit lighter, maybe they might be a bit darker. But all in all, when I look at these church burnings and these church shootings, when I look at this and I'm looking at all this, I'm just like, wait a minute, this shows a lack of regard for life or respect. And yet they want to talk about we should respect the church, we should respect religion. But if you can't respect, the house of God or the house of religion, how the hell can you tell other people to respect religion? Tell me that. Really me that. Like, honestly, tell me. How can you tell me to respect religion, especially when you have somebody that's willing to burn churches, that's willing to desecrate graves, just so they can build buildings? But yet you want to talk to me and tell me that I should not talk about race, I should not talk about religion, I should not talk about the oppressive side of things. Man, come on. That's bullshitting, man. We have to talk about these things, because if we don't, guess what? Who else is going to? And looking at that, and from my perspective, man, it's just sad. It just doesn't make any sense. And these church burnings, man, it just doesn't make any sense. Why? Why? Just why? And yeah, you want to talk about, other people. You want to talk about the Kardashians. You want to talk about celebrities. Man, those are just high-paid employees, man. These are lives that are at stake, and yet they're not talking about it. But I'm willing to. And with that, YouTube, that's my take on, the church burnings and overall my thoughts on it. And if you agree, you agree. If you disagree, then you disagree, because that's all I gotta say. And overall, it's, very disturbing, and it's disgusting even, because it shows that, nothing has changed in America. Like I always say, I won. Hope you have a great time. Later.